I dream and the world trembles.
You are listening to the Emerald Dreamcast, a World of Warcraft podcast, with your hosts, Hazel and Wowmartiean.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the stream, the podcast that aims to please. Welcome to Emerald Dreamcast, episode 5, this April 11th, 2016. We are now available all over the place, d20crit.com, as well as Stitcher and iTunes. We are happy to be speaking to you wherever you are at this very moment. Let me introduced, past tense. I went back in time and introduced her. Introduce my co-host, Hazel Bro.
Hello.
No. Maybe I shouldn't go with that right off the bat.
I am Hazel Bro.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Greetings.
I'm playing
so proud of you. You got the right episode title in the name of the Twitch stream.
I did that last week too, okay? It was 2 weeks ago I failed. Okay, can we let that go?
No.
Man, I really shouldn't go with the Hazel Bro right away because, you're playing that warrior so much, it's like the steroids. They're just kicking in.
No, Hazel Bro's not a warrior. I haven't touched my warrior in a while. My warrior's bad for me. Hazel Bro's my third druid.
Oh, okay. See, that was my mistake then. Because Hazel Bro just seems like a warrior.
It does, yeah.
Okay. Anyway, thanks again, folks, for stopping by. We have a lot to get to this week. It's funny because it's not like we have a million topics, but we have a lot to say on the topics that we have. Obviously, Legion Alpha is going crazy right now. There's lots going on there, and so we're going to have a lot to say about that. But first, we're going to go ahead and start off and see what we've been up to. Hazel, what have you been doing the past week since we last spoke?
Well, normal stuff, of course. I've been kind of missing days, to be honest. I have a confession. I've been missing days on my garrison. There's just gold sitting there waiting for me to take it, and some days I just can't be bothered to log on and get it. And the reason I think that I haven't been doing that is that I can no longer appear offline on Battle.net. The methods that used to be possible through are no longer available with this new Battle.net update. Mm-hmm. So whenever I'm logging on and doing my garrison thing, not only am I spamming everybody in my friends list with Hazel has gone offline, Hazel has come online, 13 times
right.
to go through all my alts.
Yeah.
But I'm also available and people will chat and see if I can queue, and I'm doing this at 7:30 in the morning. And I have a personal problem where it's very hard to say no to people. So so I've just been avoiding that whole situation. And I'll set myself to do not disturb, and people just don't care. So I think I need to just stop answering messages when I have D&D up. But I feel it feels so rude, So I'm doing the garrison thing sometimes. I've been queuing PvP as normal. Nothing really new in that front. And then I have also, kind of in between queue sessions, been taking one of my friends in-game on a tour of all of the places to buy vendor pets to expand his pet collection, and we've been kind of doing PvP pet battles in between games. We've just been pet battle dueling over and over again. It's quite fun. We've got a whole RP thing where we RP walk up, and he's like a gym leader that I'm repeatedly challenging. I don't know why he's a gym leader. I'm Hazel from HazelNuttyGames, but whatever. I'll get over it.
Okay.
And it's actually been getting me a little bit more interested in PvP pet battles because it's more engaging when you know the person whose ass you are kicking at that moment. That's the problem with random queue system is you have no idea.
Right, and I haven't done any of that stuff, but I have always, I've been curious about the PvPing, but I never really had good enough pets to compete at all. In fact, when they first opened up the pet battles on the Miss Beta, I didn't know what I was supposed to do. I didn't understand the whole concept of trainers and all that stuff. In fact, I started trying to pet battle before I even talked to the first pet battle person who allows you to be able to pet battle. So, there's a whole video I have on my channel. But yeah, I started trying to pet battle random people. We successfully did it, but my pets were just getting stomped on. So I was like, This is crazy. What's going on? So now that I have a decent stable of pets, thanks to the videos over at HazelNuttyGames over on YouTube, I actually feel like I could somewhat compete against some people, not against you, because I know you have every pet leveled all the way up and rare quality and all that stuff, but some people I think I'd do all right against.
Well, even what I'm finding is even with a random spread of pets, like if you're not actively metagaming your team, but you just like the thing I've been having fun doing lately is putting together themes. Like I put together a druid theme where I had like a fawn and a moth and like a bunny.
Right.
And if you have just 3 somewhat random pets against 3 other somewhat random pets, shockingly enough, the outcome is somewhat random, so long as they're all level 25 and rare. And those are the battles that I've been having most fun with, when nobody's like trying to abuse a game-breaking mechanic to like really gain an edge.
Right.
And you're just kind of like having fun with the RNG of it.
Yep. Yeah, I remember I tried to theme out some pets initially, but then I'd have like 3 dragons, and I didn't understand the concept of the different types of pets and stuff.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay.
That's the tough part, is putting together a pet theme without doubling up on types.
Right.
Yeah.
That was, and I see, okay, confession, and this probably won't matter to anybody, but I've never played a Pokemon game before, so.
What?
Like.
It
no.
matters to me.
Matters
What?
to me. Sorry.
Okay.
I know, I'm sorry.
Okay.
See, but the good thing is, the way I got her to do this podcast, like I said, she can't say no to anybody. So even if she isn't extremely disappointed in me in this very moment, she'll get over it. Thank goodness. So, but yeah, what about your real life? Anything going on there? Get a dog, a cat, or like an alligator named Travis?
We're kind of maxed out on pets right now.
Okay.
I would love another dog and another cat, but we pay an extra, I think it's like $50 a month for each pet we have in this place, and also we're not allowed anymore. So one day when we get ourselves into a house, I will go full crazy for a mom. But we have, let's see, it's gone full summer mode. It got hot as hell here randomly, even though it's Northern Oregon and it's April. It's been like almost 100 degrees inside the house.
Wow.
With I mean, to be fair, our apartment heats up quite badly. It was only like high 80s outside, but still for April, that's insane.
Yeah.
And Dark Souls 3 has come out today.
Yes.
So, my husband has the day off, and he is in the other room, presumably playing Dark Souls 3. I have it preloaded on Steam, and it's like winking at me from my taskbar, so it's a testament to our friendship that I'm here right now doing this podcast.
Well, yeah. Well, hey, our loyalty to our
They
listeners.
launched literally like an hour ago.
Guess we didn't think that far ahead when we decided to do Mondays. But wasn't it Dark Souls 2 that you got heavily involved in last time?
Yes.
I think I remember that. So
like a year or two ago.
that's when I heard 3 was coming out, I'm like, oh boy,
yeah.
her crack is back.
I haven't taken too close of a look at it because I'm kind of afraid of that, and I really don't have, between the Legion Alpha and the thing I'm trying to do in the Legion Alpha right now, which is leveling pets from scratch because I still don't have account character data copy activated. So I'm trying to level from scratch on Alpha so that I can test some of the pet battles.
Yeah.
And of course, keeping up with PvP, and I've newly gotten addicted to Black Desert Online, which is just fantastic. So I don't have time, but I want to so bad. I just need to print time somehow.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to when we can get copy characters over, because that's going to determine a lot of things about how I feel and how I'm going to play the rest of Warlords out in terms of the wardrobe, because I really don't know everything that I'm going to have, because I've been playing. I mean, it's going to be in July, it's going to be 10 years I've been playing, so all those quest, results that I all the gear that I didn't pick and all that stuff, I have no idea, after all these characters that I've played, how much stuff I'm going to have. So I'm very curious how that's going to play out on all my characters, because I've done that before with when the mounts and everything came out. I went ahead and I copied like all my characters over onto the beta, and it's like, okay, so I'll pretty much try and represent my live situation as much as I can on there and see how it all plays out. So, as far as I'm concerned, luckily, I have to tell you, we talk about the alligator Travis. There is no Travis anymore. We haven't had water in here in probably a week and a half now. The city has sorted their problems, because it was the city's issue. Thank God.
That's good.
So
Are they liable?
They're not liable for anything, but at least they solved it. We didn't have to pay for anything, so that's the good thing.
You have a going away party for Travis.
Well, the neighbor actually seemed to have worse problems. They actually had a company come out and have to like pump water out of their basement and whatever else. So they must have had it worse than us. So I don't know if the city paid for that and whatever else. I have zero clue. But we didn't have enough issue that we even worried about it. But as far as in-game, like you said, after I hit my million, I've kind of laid off my garrisons, and I kind of was doing my Dragon Soul runs and stuff like that. But this past week, I've kind of just laid off, kind of taken a break, not like a major one, but just enough that I don't want to get burnt out. And past 2 weeks, again, when I was going for 1 million, I was doing Kazakh every week on 24 character or 21 characters. No, it was 24 characters. That's right.
You're insane.
Yes, but
You're absolutely crazy.
I know, but the past 2 weeks after I've hit that, I haven't done them at all. So I'm like, yeah, it's just okay, whatever. I mean, I'm still doing my logging in and doing my garrisons on my main server like twice a day, just getting that gold that way, just to keep getting at least a little bit accrued so I can pay for WoW tokens and stuff like that. But otherwise, I'm just kind of dipping out and playing some other games, playing a lot of Rocket League and stuff these days. So
yeah,
actually jumped into SWTOR this past weekend again for a little bit, just to play it from a very single player storyline standpoint. They've done a good job at making that a lot easier and more interesting in the current iteration. So been toying around with that a little bit as well. So that's about it for the most part. Everything's going well. Oh, I have to say, I'm on a job hunt. I'm fine at my current job, but it is like 40 minutes away, and I want to find something a little closer and a little bit more what I want to do. So I actually, over the weekend, did some testing for a staffing agency, so I had to do like a typing test and, all that fun stuff. So did all that stuff online, so we'll hopefully find out in the next week if there's an opening. There is actually one place that she said she wanted to put me, so hopefully that'll work out so I can finally be only about 15 minutes away instead of 40. That'd be much better.
So that's how you make time.
Yes, there is exactly right. Exactly. It's hard to make time, but that is definitely one way. Play the odds as best you can. So, all right. So we're gonna go ahead and get talking about this is going to be a very kind of newsy show. We usually don't go into a ton of news, but there is so much information and stuff going on in the community that we want to talk about some stuff. The first thing I want to talk about is something that it's funny because it's a very kind of localized thing, and I don't think a lot of people necessarily understood about it at all until now, and it touched almost everybody in the community. Probably heard about it during this time. Is private servers, and in particular one big one called Nostralius. And I think they had at one point, I think over time they had 1 million subs, or well, not subs, but active members or something like that. It was a pretty big private server. And Blizzard,
I think it was 100,000. I don't know if it was
100,000. Okay, maybe I'm wrong about that. I think they said over like 3 years. I guess they weren't active.
People that passed through. That's very possible.
Right. Yeah. It's something that I've gone back and forth about how I feel. I understand where people are coming from, but just to go over the situation, Blizzard actually sent them a cease and desist, and they did actually end up shutting the server down. I think it was yesterday. And it was very interesting to see so many people in the community having different opinions about it and going back and forth. Again, it's not something I think a lot of people were talking about before. So this has brought up a bunch of conversation. Very curious, what do you think of, I guess, this situation, but private servers in general?
Well, I think it really plays into how people on the internet, and I may offend some people here, but people, especially nowadays, they have this mentality of, if I want a thing, I deserve it. If this show exists and I can't get access to it, I deserve to watch it. If this thing is out there and it could happen, then I need it. If you don't want to give it to me, I'm going to find some way to get it on my own, and there's nothing wrong with that because you weren't going to give it to me anyways. And there's this very entitled mentality that comes around that, and I think that's really what makes people so attracted, so upset about this whole private server shutdown, is everybody's saying now that Nostalrius is gone, and well, Blizz, what are you going to do for these hundreds of thousands of people that clearly want this vanilla experience? And they think that Blizzard, they need to deliver on that. And while I think it might be a smart thing to do for them to look into it, because obviously there's a market there, it turns me off a little tiny bit how much people think that Blizzard owes them this thing after they've been stealing their content for so long.
Right.
I think I started at the end of my argument, and I think I had some nicer things to say before that. I got really
She went
upset.
straight to the venom.
Yeah, no. I was reading through the Reddit thread of the original shutdown and reading about everybody's experiences and reading about the experience of people that have been playing on the server, and it's basically their version of WoW for years now, and listening to them have to come to terms with the fact that they cannot play that anymore, that those characters, that data is going to be gone, it's shut down, You have to leave your dwarf hunter. You got to park him somewhere until the end of time, and you'll never be able to see him again. And that sounds like a really emotional experience. So I totally understand people that have been playing this experience. And I can't really, even despite what I just said, I can't really judge anybody too much for trying it, because obviously there's a lot of nostalgia there, and it's also free to play. The thing that people kind of gloss over when they're talking about the numbers is that Nostalrius was free to play. I believe there were microtransactions, but there was no sub fee, there was no purchase box fee. It was free to download and get into. So of course everybody's going to try it, and of course a lot of people are going to play it because it's WoW, but it's free. And so I can definitely understand the emotion behind people that have to then step away from that forever and leave behind all their experiences, and especially in a game like WoW where you've accumulated, I guess it was vanilla, so there weren't like achievement points, but you've accumulated this whole story, this whole history on a character, and to have to actually put that down forever is, I can see why people are so upset.
Yeah, and that's the thing. For me, I've been I tend to be very black and white about stuff, and I think it irritates people to no end. Like the show Dexter, I can't deal with it because everybody's like, I'm like, the lead characters, he's a serial killer, but they're like, he's a good serial killer. No, good serial killer. Understand how that doesn't make sense to me. I'm sorry. Maybe I'm a little naive that way, but I'm sorry. I can't get behind that. So when it comes to private servers, it's I've seen many people just saying to just say it's against TOS makes it wrong is just a cop out, blah blah blah. But I'm sorry, it's against TOS, which means it's against the wishes of the company that I appreciate. I vote with my money. I've been playing this game for a long time, and I want to support the companies and the entertainments that I like. And so Blizzard, obviously owns this property. They have World of Warcraft proper as we're playing it now. If somebody else yanks that same stuff, that all those people that spent years and everything else developing and then just run it on their own, microtransactions or sub fees or any money changing hands, I mean, that's definitely way beyond. But I mean, just to take that intellectual property, like you can't take somebody's art and claim it as your own, or use it for your own without their permission or payment or something like that. Copyright, with royalties, with music and everything else, it's the same exact thing. So I just was very black and white about it. It's like, I don't care what your reasoning is. It's against the wishes of the company that created it. Therefore, you should, especially as a fan, you see a lot of content creators. I'm sorry, I've seen a lot of content creators doing stuff on these private servers. And I'm like, how can you, make, and I mean, a lot of these people are making money through Patreon and through their YouTube and everything else based on their content for World of Warcraft. So I don't know how they could just be like, hey, I'm just going to go ahead and do this, which is blatantly against, the company that's really basically paying for stuff for me.
Right.
But from that standpoint, that's how I felt about it, and that's just that, in a nutshell. And that's how I'm going to feel about it. But yesterday, I must admit, something I didn't expect to happen when they did shut down the server. And there was a lot of information coming out about the server going down, kind of like you were saying specifically, how you understand parking that character and never seeing it again. It actually made sense to me on an emotional level. The way I guess I thought about it before was very much a cerebral thing, not with my heart. Seeing that and seeing all the people in the different cities and whatever else, there's several videos of the shutdown, and just seeing all these people together, and it reminded me of the game back in the day when it was a little bit more tight in terms of community. You couldn't just queue stuff for randomly. You did have a community on your server and stuff like that. So I now get it from an emotional standpoint. So I understand. I still don't think it's right by any stretch, but at least I get it a little bit more. And frankly, it made me think, someday WoW's probably it's got to end at some point. Yeah. And so someday we're all going to kind of go through that. So I got that from that standpoint. So hopefully I was never too hard on anybody about the whole situation, but yeah, it is intellectual property. There's no way to get around it, and I'm going to support Blizzard in the way that I can, and I'm not going to go around, using somebody their stolen information and everything else for my own good. So. And
another angle that a lot of people aren't considering is they're not necessarily issuing the cease and desist just with the mentality of I'm going to be a dick and I'm going to shut down this thing all these people love.
Right.
They have to, like, the thing is about a company with copyright is you have to actively be defending your intellectual property and filing orders like that if you want to maintain ownership of it. If you just turn a blind eye and you let people do that and it can be proven in a court of law that you just kind of let that slide, you can actually lose your copyright. You could lose your trademarks. So it's not, like, from a legal standpoint, they may not have, and I don't know which way it is, but they may not have really wanted to do it, but it's something that you have to do with a copyright owner.
Right.
So,
yeah, and that's the thing. I mean,
they're not raw evil. They might be, but they're not guaranteed to be raw evil.
You know, that's the thing. At some point, people have to understand that Blizzard is a company. You know, I mean, yes, they do a good job for the most part, I think, at dealing with their customers, more than I think any company that I've ever dealt with. But yeah, overall, they have to do what they have to do to make money and, like you said, keep their intellectual property. So, yeah, I mean, and to their credit, they know about private servers and stuff. It's not like they squash every single one. They certainly waited till this thing got huge and out of control.
Yeah, there were streams on Twitch of Nostalrius. Like, I kept noticing, I was wondering if it was a guild or something, because I kept seeing it in people's names of their Twitch streams, and eventually I figured out what it was, and it was like, it seemed like a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe it just got too big for itself. And
right. Yeah.
They had to do something about it.
There was big streamers like Towley that went on private service and were streaming. He actually got told to knock it off. I never saw anybody on YouTube making videos ever get told anything from what I could see, but streams were definitely getting shut down. So
yeah.
But again, it is what it is, and we in terms of legacy servers, which is now the topic of conversation, feeling like Blizzard should do that. They're not going to happen, folks. I mean, maybe when the game does finish up, I could see them like rebooting it.
Yeah, I think that's a possibility.
Yeah, I could see them restarting the whole thing from vanilla on. Now that would be somewhat interesting. I don't think they actually will do that, but that would be somewhat interesting. But they're not going to do that while the game is. You can't, like they say, you can't split the player base up. If they did a legacy server now. I mean, we're already down subs, and the world's kind of feel empty and everything else. Imagine if they did a legacy server right now. Not everybody would play it, but enough to empty the world even more. So, not going to happen. Not while these things are live. Not going to happen. So, maybe someday. It would be nice when I'm in my nursing home playing vanilla again. We'll see.
I can imagine, like, when they finally stopped making WoW expansions and they moved on to whatever else new project it is, I can see them putting up some legacy servers of different versions of the game and not developing them, but just maintaining them in their current state and saying there's never going to be more content for this. We're just going to try and keep it stable. Yep. And just minimum time invested for them. And hopefully at that point they would take down the sub fee and just have microtransactions within those different versions of the game. But I also don't think it'll really be worth it for them to do that, because at that point, of course, they're going to be working on whatever's next, whatever comes after WoW.
Right. Yeah. The world of Overwatch, maybe that get an MMO based on Overwatch. We'll see, but yeah, not for a while, if ever. It would be interesting, but yeah, we'll see. Anyway, what we want to talk about next is, again, a lot of the next couple topics are going to be very much about Alpha. There's a lot going on in Alpha. A lot of new things have come up since the last iteration of Alpha. So we're going to go ahead and talk about that. And one of the first things we want to talk about is professions. But what we want to do is talk about professions, how they have evolved. We talked about a little bit about leveling, how it has evolved last week. And this week we're going to talk about how the professions have evolved. And that is going to be in our past, present, and future segment.
Roads? Where we're going, we don't need roads.
There we go. So, let's talk about past, present, and future of professions. I remember for myself, professions being very interesting gameplay early on when I didn't know what I was doing, what I was playing, or anything else. But what I really, really remember, and what I miss a bit, is how people that could craft gear and things like that, how those were really important in terms of gameplay. Those bits of gear were actually very valuable and almost necessary in some cases to go raiding, where it seems like now, I mean, you'll get some gear that can be made by different classes or different professions and things like that, but they're so outdone by the drops and stuff that they're not as consequential. That'd be, as far as my looking back at the old way of doing things, that's my only disappointment with professions. They don't feel as necessary as they used to be. What do you think?
Well, I think that's a fair point, but I think if we're talking about the current patch, it's not quite true. Crafted gear, 6 of 6 crafted gear, especially if you double upgrade it after that point, is actually quite competitive up to a high-end heroic rating situation, especially because with the way that you can reroll stats in your gear, you can completely optimize the stats. You can get perfect stats for your spec, and then you can get it 6 of 6 and double upgrade it, and it'll be generally speaking ahead of whatever you're going to get in heroic HFC. It all falls apart once you get into Mythic anyways, but I don't think Mythic Raiders really want to be having to craft gear anyways. It doesn't seem like that's really part of the game for that particular audience, but crafted gear is still relevant right now in the raiding scene for most people, and it's also relevant probably unintentionally, but in PvP, I know a lot of different specs in PvP right now are doing really well with a 6 of 6 crafted ring, because the way that PvP rings work, because you can't equip 2 of the same one. You get one that's got the stats you want, and then you put on one that's got kind of crappy stats. So instead, people are putting on one good PvP ring, and then they're getting one 6 of 6 crafted ring that has their ideal stats. And even though it doesn't scale as well in PvP as a PvP ring would, the extra stat difference makes a difference for their spec that's significant enough to justify putting that on. So I think crafted gear is still relevant right now. However, I think they've really, they started this in MoP with the addition of daily cooldown materials, like daily making your, what was it called? Silkweave cloth? Silk something. You had to go and do the moth thing. And while it was neat being able to actually go to a place in the world that was like an actual silk factory and doing some quests and kind of seeing how it was made, that daily cooldown crafting method that just kind of time gates making gear, I understand why they did it, but I don't think it's the best way to do it. I think and they really continued that in Warlords with not only the daily cooldown mats, but now you have the garrison buildings, you have a garrison follower that can help make you extra mats, and then you learn recipes, or you can do them without even having the profession. I think all of that was intended to make professions more accessible and make them more engaging, and I think it did the exact opposite and made them really boring, especially with the way that you can get both herbs and ore right in your garrison.
Right. It
really sucked the whole life out of it, and I really hope that they move away from that daily component style of professions in Legion, because it's not fun for everybody. They used to have, back in Wrath, you had rare ore, you had frozen lotus, you had these rare, valuable mats that were rare drops from gathering, where you had to actually go out in the world and gather. And that was what was gating you from making stuff. You could, if you were really, really rich, or, you had somebody's nudes and you could, blackmail them, and you could take all of the frozen lotus. You could craft whatever you want.
Did not see that coming.
But you could do it all in one day, but for the most people, there was basically the same amount of time as it would take with it being gated by a daily cooldown, except that you actually had that satisfaction of going in the world and getting that excitement when you see that rare mat drop. And I hope we go back to that, but I haven't done enough gathering in Legion to tell whether or not that is actually the case.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I didn't think about it before, but when I first started playing in vanilla, one of my favorite things to do was go early morning when people were not really on the server very much, and go around and mine ore just to try and make some gold myself, because I mean, to get an epic mount and all that stuff was like 1,000 gold back then. That doesn't sound like anything now, but it was huge back in the day. And so I would go out and I would just gather up as much thorium as I could, and really hope that I could get an arcane crystal to pop from one of them, because those things sold for a lot. So if I could get enough of those, then it would really help me out. So that was a good part of why I went out and did those mining farming runs. And yeah, that would be nice. I mean, one thing that I because that's one of my favorite things to do when it comes to professions, gathering ore was something I've always found a way to use that to my advantage to make some gold somewhere. But in Mist of Pandaria, I really was frustrated with that. I mean, I don't know what you thought of mining in Mist of Pandaria, but I mean, the ore was everywhere, and the what was Trillium was just a random spawn, so it'd be in any of the same spots that the other ones could be. So I got really frustrated with that, because it's just kind of like almost the same as having the ore in your garrison. I mean, not quite, because it's right in your garrison, but I mean, literally, you could walk 5 feet in Pandaria and trip over ore, and it wasn't worth it. It wasn't fun, and it wasn't interesting at all. So I don't know if you did any mining in your time.
I did, yeah. I think that they may have done that in some, like they wanted, I think, in Mist to support people with Gathering, and they wanted to make Gathering feel good by making you not have to look too far to get it, and they also wanted to make sure that if there was a whole bunch of people that were gathering in the same zone, that it would be able to support everybody so that people didn't get quite so mad at each other. And I think that now that in Legion, ore and herb nodes are shared, like if a druid swoops down and takes your herb, it's not actually going to be gone. I think that they can now really fine-tune exactly how common they want herbs and ore to be, and really make it so while it's not frustrating to go farm and you can still get a reasonable amount and feel like you're earning gold if you're actually, if that's your thing, if you want to go out and gather, that you can do that.
Yeah.
But also not make it like you're saying where you can just, it feels like mining ore in your garrison because it's just absolutely everywhere. I think they really have an opportunity to kind of fine-tune that balance in Legion with the new node sharing.
And that's the thing. I thought it was interesting to go to find different ways and different places that are out of the way. Like in particular in Kata, I would go. A lot of people go to Twilight Highlands to farm ore, but I would go to Uldum, which a lot of people, when I first told them that, they're like, "That's dumb." But then I took a friend of mine and did my farming run, and I showed her exactly what I did because it was perfectly timed that when you went the circle that I did in the zone, the rest of it would start popping right as you were coming up. It was perfectly timed, and she never went back to going to Twilight Highlands after that. So I kind of liked those little things, and it kind of was part of the social aspect, fighting. I mean, it won't be fighting for ore now, so I guess it really isn't relevant, but I don't know. It just seems like we're losing some of those little things that make that social interaction, even good and bad. Sometimes you get frustrated, but still, it's that shared world. Now everything's kind of easier, but I don't know. I mean, I think it's good, like you said, especially if they go with it so that they can spread stuff out and make it more interesting instead of just farming it, even though it's going to be shared. I'm all for it, so we'll see how it goes. But I do see. And then one thing that I get frustrated with Blizzard in terms of, they need to understand how those rare things that happen mean something. By that I mean, like with the arcane crystal, anything where it's just a random drop or something like that. I mean, a pet or a mount or whatever else. Those things extend the life of gameplay a lot of times. People continue to do that stuff way after current content is going on. As we see, a lot of people still hanging around are still farming those mounts and stuff. So it would be nice if they had more like things like arcane crystals and other random things pop up with
I think that's where they're going with the new world drop legendary items.
Yeah, true.
There's like the cloaks and stuff, but I think the problem with that is that if those become best in slot in a raiding environment, they're going to feel mandatory, and then you've got this massive grind where you have to go out and you have to kill random stuff everywhere for days and days and days to get your stuff, and then once you're done, you're never going to touch it again. I think they really need to make sure that the rewards that they're doing for that kind of really low drop chance random grind are cosmetic. I want to see mounts and pets, and maybe titles. Titles would be cool.
Right. Yep.
Maybe you get a tower, maybe there's rare transmog, now they've got the transmog wardrobe. But don't make it combat related.
Yep.
I don't think that's smart.
No, I totally agree with you. I mean, look at that. Somebody gets good RNG and they get 3 of those legendaries, and they're pretty well set. I mean, not only is it kind of sucky for other people who don't get that kind of luck, but also look at them. They're probably not going to have to worry about, the farming. There'll be certain bosses they don't care about because they have no worries about upgrades, and they got it so early on. They're all set in those regards. So, yeah, I agree with you. It shouldn't be about any kind of gameplay stuff. It should all be extra. So totally.
I'll tell you, I really miss. I had, and this is a little bit weird, but I had an absolute blast farming whelp pets. Like all of the whelp pets, the green one, the blue one, the red one, they're basically a 1 in 1,000 drop rate within a different world zone in like a certain type of mob. Or now they've just extended the whole zone. Like for example, the blue whelp is now a 1 in 1,000 drop rate in Winter Spring on any mob. And I used to love just going out and setting myself up while doing something else and just killing hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of mobs, because every time it's kind of like pulling a little slot machine. You kill the mob, you loot it, and you look to see that color, and then you don't see it. But the only thing you lost was your time. You're not gambling with money, so you just do it again, you do it again, you do it again, and you just stay there forever. And when you finally get that drop, that adrenaline hit is so addicting that you immediately look for the next pet to do. And now that I'm out of pets to farm, I'm a little sad.
Yeah.
If I want to go grind something like that, the only thing to really grind is rep, and it doesn't have that same RNG component of getting that rare drop. But because they're pets, they're not mandatory. It's not like I can't show up to raid. It's not like I'm going to feel like I'm not bringing everything that I can to like benefit a group situation. Right. It's just something I'm doing for me.
That the slot machine analogy is perfect. That is exactly right, and I think that would be a good way to explain it to Blizzard in terms of extending the life of stuff. Heck, I mean, I've always wanted to go out and get. I mean, I've done a little bit of farming on some of those whelps myself, and it's just like, the odds on it just get a little frustrating after a while. But yeah, I mean, it gives people who want to spend hours and hours like you doing it, gives them that chance. Gives somebody else to go out and poke a couple things and hope they get something. If not, like you said, I didn't have good luck at the at the casino. I can go home.
It gives people that want to do that for gold instead of pets something to do as well, because those pets are so valuable. They sell for a lot, so you'll see people that are farming gold do the same thing.
Absolutely, yeah. And there's so many different ways to play that. So, yeah, I like that, and I wish we'd see more of that. I think. And I don't think I wouldn't think it would be very difficult, put another model out there, put the, drop rate at whatever, and just leave it. And
they did a little bit of that in Warlords. There is one pet that is a rare drop in Shadowman Valley on an island. You kill some crabs and you have a chance to get a pet, but it's like a 1 in 100 drop rate. You go out there for an hour and a half and you're going to get it.
Right.
They haven't done any of those super rare drop pets since Vanilla, I think.
Yeah. I haven't seen anything like that.
They had the Firefly in Burning Crusade.
Oh, yes, that's right. Which by the way, one of the most frustrating things ever. I actually got one, like one day before work or something. I just sat down and I think it was like only an hour. I actually ended up getting one. I was so psyched, not only because it was rare, but because Firefly was one of my favorite shows. So it was perfect for me. And then when we had the merging of all the pets and mounts and everything else, there was maybe it wasn't then, maybe it was some other time, but there was a screw up during one of the patches where the pets and stuff got all goofed up and people lost some and stuff like that. I lost my Firefly and I put in a ticket and they have no evidence of me ever having it, so I didn't get it back. I was very upset. I ended up getting another one later on, thank goodness. But boy, that was the only time I was like, screw Blizzard, I'm out of here.
Oh, no.
So, but yeah, it'd be nice if we had more of that stuff. Speaking of which, eventually I need to go and get some of those rare pets in that area at the Grand in Warlords. There's some pets over there, right? And those rares out there, over by where the Black Market Auction House is.
There's rare pets out there?
I believe so. Maybe I'm thinking Tanan. I might be thinking Tanan. Either way, I need to get out and get some of those. I haven't farmed a lot of that stuff, especially in Tanan. I haven't hardly done anything. So. And toys and everything else. They've got so many different options now, especially with the account-wide wardrobe and pet and toys and everything else. There's no reason not to include some of that stuff, so it'd be nice to see more of that.
I'm surprised that they haven't done more toys as world drops. From what I've seen, toys have been pretty much exclusively off vendors, achievements, and then mostly rare mobs, even in Warlords.
Yeah.
Every toy that I've come across so far has been a drop off a rare mob, and now that rare mobs aren't really rare anymore, it feels like you're just going to take a character, you're going to do a loop of all of the rares. You're going to do that whether you care about toys and pets or not, because they have a chance to give you artifact power, and then you've got it all.
Yeah.
It's just done.
Yeah, but I am glad the rares actually have a lot of pets and stuff like that. I was afraid they were going to be, just for artifact power and stuff like that. So they do have some reason to go after those particular rares, just kind of like some of the vanity stuff in Mist. So I think they're at least on the right track with that stuff. But I think they're 100% drop, so
yeah,
I don't know.
Looks like it.
Well, to be fair, they were 100% drop in Mist originally too, and they eventually changed that. So maybe if we're still in alpha, maybe they'll put a drop rate to it.
That's true.
We'll see how that goes.
The problem with that, I think, though, is that since Warlords and them changing rare mobs to be vignette mobs and making them like they spawn, and then after you've killed them once, they don't even have the rare ports anymore. They're not going to show up in your map.
That's true.
I think that's something they're probably not going to do.
Yeah, that's right. It will probably have to be 100% because, like you said, they won't be rare again. That's true. I see that.
That's a shame.
That bothers me. I can go off on that again.
Yeah. We got a bit off topic on professions. We talked about gathering, and then we kind of went off in a bit of a tangent. I wanted to talk a little bit about the way that they're taking actual crafting professions in Legion, and they talked such a big game at BlizzCon about, we understand the professions are getting stale. We know that they're not everything we want them to be. We're going to overhaul them. We have this whole team. We have this whole team of people doing professions to make them really engaging, and you're going to do these quests, and you're going to meet these people. And from what I've seen, and I'm going to fully disclose that I haven't done enough of it to really understand what's going on, so I may just not have gotten far enough. But from what I've seen, there are some quests, and then there are professions, and they are pretty much the same thing that they've been before. And I think that's really kind of underwhelming. I'm going to give it more time because some of the quests that I've been trying to do, like the enchanting ones, some of them are absolutely, actually not completable at this time. They still have some work to do. But I'm disappointed. I'm spoiled because I've been playing Black Desert Online, and Black Desert Online is like the pinnacle of complex professions. Like, it actually could not get any... Crafting something in Black Desert Online is almost as difficult as crafting in real life. You are going into the world to chop down the tree to try and get the right kind of lumber. You are then chopping that lumber into plywood, then you are chopping that plywood into planks. You are taking that, you're loading those planks onto your donkey, and you're walking them back to town, and then you're going to, like, make some guy go get you some rocks, and you're going to turn those into, like, dust. And then you're going to do the same thing for, like, another 6 or 7 components. Maybe you go out in the world and, like, get some stuff. Maybe you pay some other people to do it for you. Maybe you buy it off the auction house. And then there's different steps of crafting, and you have to have a worker oversee each individual part of it. And this whole thing, like, there's so many different components to each individual thing, and it's just really overwhelming. And at first, when I tried to get into Black Desert, I actually quit because I, like, couldn't handle how complicated everything was. But the second time that I got into it and I armed myself with the relevant spreadsheets that people have put together to kind of understand how all this works, it's so engaging. I'm so addicted to it because it feels so good to, like, when I'm making fried fish, instead of just, like, catching a fish and then, like, combining it with some white flour, that you go out and you get the wheat and you grind the wheat, and then if you want to make dough, you get some water and you shake the water and the dough and the wheat and you shake the water and the flour that you got from grinding the wheat to make the dough. And I don't think this is necessarily a direction that WoW needs to go. I think that would make people unnecessarily frustrated, and it doesn't really fit with the style of WoW. But it just really made me see that it's not impossible to have a crafting profession system that's engaging. Like, that's all I do in that game. I don't do combat. I don't do PvE. I don't do PvP. I spend my entire life being, well, right now I'm being a horse whisperer. I'm like breeding horses, but I spend my entire life, you know, catching fish and making different, learning cooking and, like, discovering recipes. And I didn't think that was possible in a modern MMO. So I think they've really got, I don't know. There's directions they could go with it, and I don't know where. I don't know what the right answer for WoW Professions is, but I don't know that they've hit on it this time. What do you think?
Well, in terms of Legion, I think they're on the right path to a degree. At least they've got people to go out in the world. And, I mean, the real thing for me is, I mean, you can go out and, you know, do all this Legion stuff and everything. You don't have to worry about if you have a character that doesn't have, you know, the profession leveled all the way up. You can go and do all the Legion professions without having to go through the mess of leveling all the way up to do the current content, which I think is, at some point, I mean, these numbers and everything to catch up after, you know, 10 years, over 10 years of this game being out there, it just gets crazy. So the fact that they're kind of circumventing that and allowing you to continue on and do all that stuff, even if you stop doing professions, you know, years ago, I think that's good. But yeah, I mean, I'm very interested in terms of how people are going to be about having to go out in the world and do quests and stuff to do these professions, because, I mean, there's a lot of people, especially, like, as far as I know, a lot of raiders in particular, that hate leveling, hate questing and all that stuff, and they just want to do the end game stuff. So to make this kind of end game, going out and doing more quests, because we're seeing that with the professions, we're seeing that elsewhere. We're going to get into the class halls and stuff as well. There's going to be questing to go out in the world, even at end game, and I'm curious. I mean, yeah, we have dailies and stuff, but this, I don't know, maybe feels a little bit more necessary, more centralized. So I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. I think that, as always, there's going to be a big market for raiders that don't want to do any of the stuff to spend gold in the auction house. Hopefully, most or all of this gear is tradable, so that somebody that has gold but not time can simply buy it at the auction house. And that creates a market demand for people that have time but not gold.
Absolutely.
That to play that game where they don't want to raid. They want to go and they want to craft stuff, and they want to be an armor smith and sell their crafted armor. And I think that's really cool. But the problem is those raiders, they've been pretty used to, over the past warlords, to having gold, you know, spoon-fed to them through, like, a catheter. So I don't know how they're going to adjust to, like, I don't know what the new ways of making gold
the
in Legion
visuals you come up with.
Yeah.
Oh my god, we need fan art.
Like, you're not going to have a garrison just, like, pooping gold out for you anymore. It's hard to say exactly where the main points of income are going to be, and what raiders are going to do to maintain that income. Like, raiders are always going to be, raiding guilds in particular, are always going to be able to sell carries, sell BOEs, and hopefully that they make enough gold obtainable through raids to sustain that market, where people can raid and have enough gold to get by and buy the stuff they need to raid with. And for people that don't raid, but they want to craft the food, they want to make the pots, they want to make the armor, hopefully there's enough raiders that have the gold to spend on that stuff and have those two different halves of the game complement each other. I think that they need to make sure there's enough gold obtainable just through raiding that somebody who only wants to raid can handle that, and that there's money to be spent on stuff that people that don't want to raid can go out and craft.
Right, yeah, and I think that's a very good point. That balance between the two is important because there are different people. I mean, they always talk about, different ways to play the game and everything else, and to make sure that those work for everybody. Yeah, I think that is a good point. And I don't know where the line is on some of that stuff. I'm worried sometimes that they make too much stuff available for people to just purchase and not, heck, I mean, they were giving gear away through the garrisons and everything else. So,
yeah,
I do worry about that fine line, but, I don't know. I think sometimes they overthink stuff and, they try and be, too new and too hip, too clever and stuff like that. It's like, you know what, just kind of go back to what you did before to a degree. I mean, augment it to the current state of things, but,
A big trend with the way Blizzard seems to be designing current and future expansions is that they look at a problem, something that annoys people, something that really gets under people's skin. People say, I hate it when people steal my node. I hate it when people are, I don't know, standing on a mountain me in a city. I hate it when this or that or that. And they say, okay, we can fix that. And they come up with a solution, they implement it.
Right.
And what's really hard to see, and I'm not saying that they're not thinking about it, but what's really hard to really see ahead is what that takes away from the game. What the flip side of that frustration is, because this is going to get kind of Buddhist, but there's a very yin-yang kind of balance to everything, and when you take all of the inconvenience out of the game, it makes your victories less satisfying. It makes it feel like you didn't work for it as much, you didn't suffer, so you don't deserve whatever you got, and it's just kind of, it doesn't mean as much.
Yeah.
So I really hope they keep in mind going forward that while convenience is good, and I certainly don't want to go back to a world where I have to get pet collections in every single character every time I switch a main, that they rein that in enough to the point where the game still feels satisfying.
Right, and I think that's what, when we're talking about getting a random drop-off of something, I think that's exactly, you put the work in so it feels a lot better when it does drop. You're exactly right. And as much as, we talk about hardcore casual and everything else, and a lot of people feel like they cater to people that are playing casually and everything by making things a little bit easier. I do think there needs to be a point where, like you said, it needs to be earned, and not because it's a punishment upon that person, but because if you want to get something, I mean, games somewhat have to be challenging. You have to overcome obstacles and work puzzles out and everything else. That's what gaming is. So it feels much better when you overcome those obstacles and stuff. Well, I could go into a whole new rant about that, but I'm not gonna. I'm gonna stop before I go crazy with that. But while we have just a few minutes, we're gonna touch on something else. But just real quick, I mean, as far as what you've seen in Legion, you're still hesitant about it in terms of professions. You still want to see, and it is alpha, so we still got time. So so we'll see how it goes. I think it's in the right direction, but yeah, there can always be a little bit more. And we have time. They're going to implement more. So, but what we want to talk about next is something that cropped up in the past few days, and people are up in arms about it as well. I'm actually concerned as well. We won't go heavy into it because, frankly, it is alpha and there's lots to go on, like we said, with professions too. But we'd be remiss if we didn't at least mention it and bring it up because it is a big concern of the community right now and being talked about. And that is the class order hall's mission table, and basically how it, at least in this current iteration, looks very much just like garrisons with a couple twists and stuff like that. Actually, it's like an amalgamation of garrisons and shipyards, really. But there's a lot of outrage about what it looks like right now. And we even had the dev Ian Hazacostas make a blue post about it, which we'll go over here in a bit, to kind of stem the tide of all the frustration with it. But from this standpoint, from what you've seen, if you haven't had a chance to touch it in alpha because, like you said, it's disabled on the one character you have available. But I don't know, and if you've seen enough from everything else, what do you feel about what you're seeing so far?
Well, from what I've seen from other people's videos and the Wowhead guide of how it works, it looks suspiciously, and this is everybody's problem with it, it looks suspiciously like garrisons, and everybody has such a bad taste in their mouths about the whole garrison thing.
Right.
That you see followers, you see resources, you see recruit these things and do these work orders. God forbid, the word work order was on the window. I cringed. It hurt me.
Right.
And you get this visceral reaction of, oh God, not again. Why would they do this to us? Did they learn nothing? And I think that the blue post that was just made that you just mentioned, really, while it helps assuage my concerns a little bit, the general message of that blue post was, it's not done yet. Chill, hold your butts. We're not done yet.
Right.
And I'm concerned because I know it's not done yet, so it's too early past judgment. But I don't see why they needed to do any kind of system like this at all. I don't think that. I know that they need to constantly innovate to kind of stay new on the market and keep things fresh. But I don't think this is a direction in which they need to be innovating. I think he specifically said, we don't see this as content. We just want this to augment the content that you have. And while certain parts of it are good, I mean, you'll be able to have followers that are class-specific, which is really cool. Class-specific followers that can kind of fill that bodyguard trait. And some of them that will not be quite like a bodyguard, but will appear to help you in combat in times of need. So if you're like low in health, maybe you recruited somebody that's going to come heal you and then go away. And I think that's really cool. I really like the Claxy buff, where when you were doing Claxy stuff in Mob, you would have a different dude come and help you with that. Mm-hmm. I really like the bodyguard system in WoW, where you can have a dude follow you around. You can level up your rep with him. You can get a certain out-of-combat convenience bonus. I really liked that, and I'm glad that they're bringing that forward. And I kind of hope that that's all there is. I want that. And then they have this tech tree, which sounded very StarCrafty, actually. The Order Hall tech tree, where you're basically investing Order Hall resources to level through an Order Hall-specific talent tree to give you different buffs and bonuses while leveling and in the world. And I think that's okay. It just depends on how much micromanaging this whole system needs. Are you going to need to go back to your Order Hall every day to send out your missions? Are you going to need to go and look for specific followers to do that? Are you going to be picking up daily quests? Is this just a new source of daily quests for you? Like, we just don't know what it's going to look like at endgame. Right. Especially because we can't access endgame right yet. We're capped at level 108. So a lot of these things, like, I really hope they don't put too much time into things that only pertain to the leveling experience, because that's your first 2 weeks of the expansion, and then the remaining, year and a half less 2 weeks is going to be the end game, and that's where I think they need to put most of their work. So if there isn't enough end game questing, like end game level 110 world questing, to justify needing to have these bodyguards and these buffs and this whole system, then I think it's all a big waste of time.
Right.
But it really depends on what your day-to-day life is going to be once you're at level 110, I think.
Right. And they did address that a bit. And we linked the blue posts in chat, and we'll put it in the description of the video, the podcast when we do put it up on the site. But they do talk about in the blue post about the raid gear. You're not going to just get like raid gear from the missions table. You're actually going to have to go out and kill a boss to be able to get. You'll get like the quest for it or whatever else, but you actually have to go out and kill the boss for it. Things like that. So they are adjusting things a little bit. But I think the main thing that you touched on right at the beginning is the big problem is that you and I are both playing right now. Even though Warlords of Draenor is not the best expansion, I think we could both agree on it. We as much as fanboy, fangirl as we are, we're not completely blind to the fact that, this is just not the best expansion. And that's where people are really frustrated, because it's like, why would you take something from an expansion that people just do not like and kind of remind us of that in a new expansion where we're trying to start fresh and kind of put all that stuff in the past. And I definitely understand that. And that's from the very initial standpoint, that's what everybody was frustrated with. And now I've lost my other point. But yeah, the other thing was that we don't want to have to feel like we need to do it. But the thing that I'm seeing is that you have 2 relic slots on your artifact weapon. If you go through the whole process of doing all this stuff with your class hall, order hall, mission table, and then level everything up and all this stuff, you get to the point where you can actually add a third one. That's probably going to feel like that's required for raiders.
Absolutely,
and that's
100%.
And that harkens back to the dailies in the initial bit of Mist that people felt like they had to do those to get everything the way they needed to be optimized for raiding too. So I'm worried about that. So, but it doesn't affect me a ton because I don't raid. But still, there shouldn't be any part of it that feels required. And they're trying to say that in the blue post. Just wait, don't worry about it. But that particular thing has me a little bit concerned.
Yeah, anybody that wants to feel like they're doing optimal numbers anywhere in PvP or PvE, or even just like flipping around in the world when somebody tries to attack you while you're trying to pick your flowers, you're gonna want to feel like you've got that.
Right. So I'm very concerned about it myself right now because, and I said this on Twitter in a conversation with some other folks. The garrisons just have always felt very gimmicky to me, and I don't know how else to put it. I know there's a YouTuber that I watch some of his videos from time to time on things. He gets very ranty, but he has some good points sometimes. As Heels versus Babyface, as over there talks about how it's a Facebook game, and it does feel like that. So I get that, but they keep talking about how it's going to put us out in the world. We're going to do missions and stuff like that from it, and there are some of that. So I hope they put more of that into it. Make it more gameplay. Make it more story-oriented and things like that. If they do that, fine. But I just wish they weren't. I just wish they weren't a thing at all in this expansion.
Yeah, I kind of do. I wish they'd put that extra time towards making more content in the world that's optional but still worth doing, if that makes any sense.
Right, and I don't know and I guess that's part of the problem is I don't know what that exactly means.
Yeah, and I don't think anybody does. I think that's a very hard line to walk. If you make something mandatory, people feel like they have to do it. It turns into a grind, and then people just kind of hate it just because they're being forced to do it. But if you make it optional, people may just not even touch it at all, and they go, "Oh, there's no content in this game. I never leave my garrison. There's nothing to do outside." Right. When they could be doing archaeology or reps or whatever else. So I don't know what the answer to that is. I just know that we don't have it right now. Right.
And when they're saying again in this blue post specifically that it's not going to it's not supposed to be a core part of the gameplay, whereas with the garrison, obviously it was. And I'll be honest, I don't know if it was intended to be that core in Warlords either, because let's remember, the garrisons were allowed to be in any of the zones in Draenor initially, but then they all got planted in the same place.
They definitely really adjusted their design philosophy as they went along. I think they saw how much work they were putting into it to make it even work, and they're like, well, we're throwing our chickens in here, we may as well have a chicken coop.
Right. Right, and that's what it felt like for me. And not only that, but I think they were running out of time. I think those two things made them very centralized, and so that's the only thing that worries me right now, because we're in April and we're still in alpha. It's been 6 months of alpha now. Yeah.
That's actually another thing that really concerns me about class order halls. Is one thing that they said really slowed down their development of the garrison is you need so much art and so much game design for all of these different buildings that all have different levels, and you have all these different followers and all these different things you can do with them within a garrison, that it's huge amounts of game design, not just art, but coding as well, to make this whole thing work. And now we have a version of that, which, while it is lesser and there's no buildings or whatever, but you have one for every single class. Every single class has different followers, has different missions, has a different class order hall, and I have to wonder what that did to the game development time. I want to see a pie chart. I'm not entitled to it, but I want to see a pie chart exactly where their time went into and how much of it is into this system that people may or may not want.
Right. Yeah, and when they announced class order halls, I like the idea of it in terms of, kind of a place to get together, and it was obviously more social than a garrison. But I was very concerned about it being garrison-like, and unfortunately that stuff has come to roost for now. Well, again, we'll see how it goes over time. The Blue Post is trying to reassure us. What we're seeing right now is a very basic iteration. It's not where they are going to end up going. It's just something they needed to implement for now until they can keep working on the rest of it. So it's going to have some, tinges of garrisons, because that's what they have available. They're still working on the other stuff. So we'll see.
Maybe they'll nail it. Maybe it'll be the best thing ever. We won't know how we lived without it before. It's a possibility.
It's true, but at this point, like I said, we keep hearing things and then other things happen. So I'm a little bit, and I think a lot of people are after Warlords, just definitely a wait and see attitude. And I wish I wasn't like that. Again, we try and be as positive as we can on this podcast about. We are fanboy fangirl. We know that. There's no doubt about it. But I have WoW at the front of my name, for God's sake. There's a reason for that. But again, we're not going to be blind, and we're not going to just sit there and just rose-colored glasses everything. So, but we'll see.
Something I wanted to mention really quick just before we finish here, while we're talking about order halls and garrisons and stuff. So Dalaran, assuming that's the social place where we're going to be when we're not in our class order halls. When you want to hang out with your friends that aren't the same class as you, that's where you're going to be.
True.
Is anybody else shocked by how much Dalaran looks like old Dalaran?
I'm not.
When they announced it, they were like, it's Dalaran, but it's not the one you remember. It's going to be reskinned. It's going to have all this new stuff. And I imagined it being basically a brand new city that was just in the style of Dalaran. And they really just copy-pasted that and made a couple of changes.
Oh, I know, absolutely.
I'm a little disappointed in that.
Yeah. And I honestly, they've done more than I thought they would, like adding that big center spot and stuff like that. Who knows? They're still probably working on it, but I knew it was going to be, just Dalaran again.
How confusing is that going to be for new players that have like gone through the whole thing where there's a Dalaran and then there's Dalaran?
Well,
and so it's like, okay, we're gonna get ready. We're gonna meet for this. We're gonna meet for ICC in Dalaran, and players just sitting in Broken Isles, being like, "Where are you?"
Right. Well, that's the thing. Think about mages. Look at all the ports to Dalaran they're going to have. They're going to have the Northrend one. They're going to have Ancient Dalaran, and now they're going to have the Dalaran and the Broken Shore.
Gosh.
Okay. So
Yeah.
that's.
I kind of wish they'd done something else there. There's nothing. There's no other city they could have made. They had to use that one again.
Well, and again, I think a lot of this is time, and that was another point I wanted to make in terms of, and I can just kind of shoehorn this in about garrisons. One of the reasons, and the class order halls, one of the reasons I think we're seeing it now, even though we don't want anything to do with it, is they have these expansions. Like they're working on like the next expansion after Legion right now, so they probably had all this so planned far ahead and thinking that garrisons were going to do so well, and now that they didn't, they just are stuck. So maybe they're trying to fix it as best they can, but it was probably too much a part of their plans way before the garrisons kind of blew up in their face. So yeah, we'll see. And yeah, I think they're saving themselves some time. I mean, we've seen a little bit like when Tanaan didn't open when Draenor, when Warlords launched, we never had a continent where a zone was missing when we first started playing. I mean, yeah.
And to have that be the final patch of the
right, yeah, exactly. See, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, they just ran out of time with it. Anybody that was playing during that alpha beta time, and you would like take a flight path and you would go over Tanaan and you saw all these just untextured models and stuff going, they don't got much time. What's going on with this? So yeah, but yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on, and I think it just to sum this up, I think it's just the new WoW. I mean, after Mist of Pandaria, we're in a new era of World of Warcraft. I don't think there's any doubt about that now. Yeah. It's just a new way of doing things. So anyway, folks, thanks again for stopping by. Hazel, I appreciate your time. We'll be back next week with even more stuff. We might have another guest. I like having guests, but I don't know if I want to do them back to back. I kind of like having a guest and then having, just us and then having a guest. So I've got a couple people I've talked to. We'll see how that goes. Going to be very interesting, and maybe we'll see more about what's going on with these class order halls. Maybe we'll have another patch come in for the alpha, and we'll see some updates, and we can talk about that more too. Yes, hopefully, because right now the community's on fire with this topic, no doubt about it. So thank you guys very much, as always, for coming out. We really do appreciate it, and we will appreciate you guys listening to us on Stitcher and iTunes this week. Hit a thumbs up on those, and leave a comment. Let us know how you like the show. Email the show at emeralddreamcast@gmail.com, or send us a tweet at emeralddreamcast with the shared D there, and let us know what you guys think. If you have any thoughts on what we can talk about next week,
you can also tweet our individual Twitters at Wowmartiean and at HazelNuttyGames if you want to turn us against each other with you can go all Game of Thrones on it and start feeding us different information.
That's true. You could if you really wanted to.
You gotta follow your heart, man.
That's absolutely, that whole thing. All right. Well, thanks, guys, again for coming, and we will see you next week. Bye.
Bye.
I rolled a 20.